If you saw yesterday's episode, I said that I had a hangover. But today, I still feel like hot garbage. I swear, if I die of COVID before I hit 100K... Grossi Posse Packer Nation! Welcome to another episode of Packcast, the podcast where you don't have to be a Packers fan, but it sure does help. I'm your host, Tom. If I pass out in the middle of this episode, just leave me. Grossi, and today we are journeying over, like the hobbits to Mordor, into the AFC. Before we get to that, I got a big shout out for a brand new patron over at patreon.com/TomGrossiComedy. A big shout out to the Packers kind of suck, but it's okay because I'm a Steelers fan, and so all we have to worry about is Mason getting hit by a helmet. I'm really glad you didn't pay $10 because I wouldn't have been able to fit that in the credits. Also, a big shout out to a brand new YouTube member, and that is Timothy Bexkiewicz. Did I do that well? I looked it up, and that's how they said to pronounce it. But a big shout out and thank you to you both. So heading into the AFC North, this is one of those divisions that is complete and total wild card, except for the Bengals. Yeah, the Bengals, guys, I'm sorry, you're not going to the playoffs this year. It's just not going to happen. But there's three other teams that could. So if you're brand new, what we're going to do is we're going to break down each team, what they did in the offseason/draft, and on top of that, we'll look at their hardest games and try to predict a record out of that. So starting off, let's start with the Cincinnati Bengals. They, of course, own the first-round pick this past draft, drafting Joe Burrow out of LSU, in which they're like, okay, Andy Dalton, you go bye-bye now. We have the future. On top of that, they also had a great second-round pick in T. Higgins. They brought in some guys to help shore up that offensive line and defensive line, both which needed a lot of help. But taking a look at where they were last year, they were 8th worst defense in points allowed, and then they were 3rd worst scoring offense. I don't think with even Joe Burrow and God that those are going to immediately turn around. So I think that this is still going to be a rebuilding year for them. On top of that, AJ Green is in a contract year. So it's going to be interesting to see if they re-up him, if they give him another contract, what that's going to look like after missing all of last season. And so the Bengals, I think, are still going to be going through some growing pains. Taking a look at some of their toughest games, they got the Chargers, they got the Browns, who I think they'll split with. The Eagles, I think they'll get swept by the Ravens. I think they'll get swept by the Steelers, the Titans, and then the Cowboys. So if they lose all of those games, they're looking at a 7-9 record, and I think that might be a little bit optimistic. Joe Burrow is getting thrown right into that fire, and for the vast majority of rookie QBs, it takes at least a season to get acclimated to the NFL. And so I don't think they'll be like god-awful, but I think they would be lucky to get to a 7-9 record this year. Then you got a very interesting team, the Cleveland Browns. Remember last year at this time when we were all looking at the Browns going, man, they could win the division. And then they didn't. Now, the reason why I pointed at the Browns is because they have been building that defense with phenomenal players through the draft. And through all those injuries they had last year, Myles Garrett getting thrown out, they still finished around the middle of the pack in points allowed on defense. They were about 13th. The problem was their offense, which we didn't think was going to be a problem at all. Yeah, they were the 11th worst scoring offense last year. Baker Mayfield completed 59.4% of his passes through 22 touchdowns and 21 interceptions. Yikes. Now, a lot of that, I think, is going to have to fall to the feet of Freddie Kitchens, who did not a great job. And so with them bringing in Kevin Stefanski, the old offensive coordinator for the Vikings, I mean, I'm assuming he's going to be able to turn that ship around. Stefanski's interviewed with them the first time around, and then they chose Kitchens, and then they're like, my bad, no, we're so sorry, come on back. And considering they will get Kareem Hunt for a full season, they have a healthy Nick Chubb, they have a number of receiving options, I think this team is poised to make a wild card run. Now, all of that is going to depend on how good Baker Mayfield is. He obviously took his lumps last year. Is he going to be able to get over the hump and go back to being a good quarterback? Taking a look at their schedule, I think that that's possible. I think they'll get swept by the Ravens. They'll probably split one with the Bengals. They'll lose to the Cowboys. They'll lose to the Steelers, and then they'll lose to the Titans. Technically, they could get swept by the Steelers, but I think they'll take one from them. Maybe they'll swing a helmet or two. So they're looking at around a 10-6 record. The Eagles also could give them problems, so I'd guess anywhere between an 8-8 and 10-6 record for the Browns, but a lot of that, again, is going to fall upon Baker Mayfield and if he can improve, but I wouldn't be surprised if they're one of those teams that's in contention for that 7th spot. Then you get the Pittsburgh Steelers. Yep. Their offense, just a long fart in a crowded room. They were the 6th worst scoring offense last year, and it makes sense. James Conner got hurt, Ben Roethlisberger got hurt, Juju was off that season, and Mason Rudolph, what he's remembered for last season is getting hit in the head with a helmet, so obviously not a lot there. But one of the big storylines coming out of last year was how good their defense was. They traded a first-round pick for Minkah Fitzpatrick, which I think was a phenomenal move on their part, and a dumbass move on the Dolphins' part. And because of that, they finished the 5th best defense when it came to points allowed. And so I think that the Steelers are going to have a dominant defense this year. The question is their offense going to be able to complement them? All my signs are pointing to yes, the biggest competition that they have within the division is obviously going to be the Ravens, but I gotta say, with their defense, unless Big Ben just sucks, I think they're gonna make a wild card run. And looking at their schedule, it's not too bad. The Broncos might give them trouble. The Titans, the Browns, they'll probably split. I think they'll probably split with the Ravens, the Cowboys, and then the Bills. So even if they got swept by the Ravens, they'd be around 9-7. But I think they'll take one from them, and they could even also sweep the Browns and also beat the Broncos. So for them, I'm also looking at around 11-5-ish record, all the way down to a 9-7 record. But if I was a gambling man, I would say that the Steelers are going to be there just because of their dominant defense. And if that offense can catch up, yikes, they're going to be a tough team to beat. And finally, you got the Baltimore Ravens. The question that everyone's asking, will the Madden curse rear its ugly head? The Ravens, by far, were one, if not the best team in football last year. During the regular season, they had the 3rd best defense in points allowed. They had the number 1 scoring offense. Lamar Jackson was running and throwing and doing all the things all over the league. They had a great running game with Mark Ingram. And on top of that, their draft is exactly what I wanted the Packers to do. It just seemed that everybody fell to them. They didn't have to trade up, and they were just like, okay, sure, I'll take Patrick Queen. Thank you very much. So looking ahead at their schedule, the toughest games I see for them are the Chiefs, the Steelers, the Titans, and the Cowboys. I don't see them getting swept by the Steelers. Maybe the Browns beat them again like they did, but I mean, it's tough to tell with these divisional games, but I got to think that they're going to sweep them. I have them at around a 12-4 record if they lost all of those games, but they could very well sweep the Steelers. Is Lamar Jackson going to regress from his MVP season last year, or are they just going to have an amazing regular season and then get bounced out by the Titans again? Sorry if that wound is still fresh. But let me know what you think down in the comments below. Who do you think is going to be taking the division? And who's your sleeper in here? It's not the Bengals. You can always find me at TomGrossiComedy.com or at TomGrossiComedy on all social media. See down below. Check out podcasts on SoundCloud, iTunes, Google Play Music, Spotify, and of course YouTube. And a big shout and thank you to all the patrons over at patreon.com/TomGrossiComedy and the YouTube members. But thank you so much for watching. I'm Tom Grossi. And as always, go Pack, go.